Welcome to another episode of Scale Sales. Really honored to have Gil from CHEQ join us today. If you could just sort of give us a brief introduction to yourself, but also the company you're working for and what you guys are up to.
Cool. So thanks for having me. First of all, very excited to be here. As you said, Gil from CHEQ. I am the head of sales development for the Americas. So that's North and Latin America. What we do at CHEQ is we help companies, first of all, find and get rid of bots and all the malicious users that are online that may be hurting their marketing, their sales efforts, making their way into their funnels, into their analytics, into their CRMs. If there's any sellers on this watching, you know what it's like to get a bad lead and you just know it's bad, but you have to call it. So beyond how annoying it is for you, there's a lot of damage there. When companies don't realize that what they're looking at is invalid, they may be making decisions based off of these numbers. And they might be thinking they gave you 100 leads and you could only close 20 of them. And if they knew that they gave you 40 leads and you closed 20 of them, all of a sudden you look like a master versus somebody who closed 20 out of 100. So we find these bots, we find these malicious, sometimes even human, but malicious users that come to websites and plague the internet. And we're able to detect them. We're able to segment them. We're able to feed that into companies' BI tools so that they see this and they can actually make actual decisions based off of actual data. And we can also block it and make sure that it's not coming back. So very exciting space to be in, especially now with the rise of ChatGPT and generative AI. Everybody has access now to these tools and they can go and create bots pretty easily with no knowledge and no prior experience. So we expect to see that the number, although already very high, of bots online, we expect to see it going up in the near future, and we're here to fight it.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously a really interesting space. And you are right, obviously, with all the different sort of AI chatbots all coming in, it's an exciting time, and to be part of that must be awesome. I know as a company, we've invested a lot of money into different bots, AI, to try and keep moving with the time. Trying to keep up with it is the hardest bit at the moment. Regarding sort of the company, how do you go about communicating sort of the value proposition or the differentiating factors of CHEQ to maybe another competitor?
So for a long time, I have to say that we were selling in a blue ocean. We were kind of the only ones out there. Were creating a category that didn't really exist before CHEQ. And it was really about, first of all, educating people about this problem. Nowadays, there's a lot of stories around us that people hear about, even on their day-to-day, unrelated to their works. We talk mainly to marketers. And people hear about the Taylor Swift tickets that get bought up in like 0.2 seconds of when they go on sale, and then somebody tries to sell them for like $20,000. Those types of stories make our lives easier because people now at least understand how big the problem is. In the beginning, people didn't really understand that it's maybe their problem. Maybe they heard about the problem, but they didn't realize how big the problem is. So when approaching our potential customers, for a while, I've been at CHEQ for 2 years, actually yesterday, 2 years. For the first probably year and a half, it was really just about letting people know that they have a problem. It's not even about differentiating why CHEQ is the one to solve it or not. It's like, first of all, you need to realize this is a problem. It exists. And we can show you that it exists, but you got to, first of all, know that it's a problem, and there's probably nobody at your company that's handling this. There might not even be a budget for it. There might not be anybody who has this in their job description, but somebody needs to do something about it. And why don't you be the first to come look at it, and we'll figure out then who else do we need to talk to and where are we going to pull budget from. But if you saw this problem, then you'd want to solve it.
It's definitely a different sort of a sales approach to maybe the sort of standard way, because obviously normally it would be, okay, cool, we know you're having this problem, or you're going in and asking people about, do you have this problem? Whereas you're sort of near enough sort of actually nearly advising people on a potential issue. How have you found that? Has it been quite a challenging sell, or is it sort of, obviously you've had 2 years of it now.
Yeah, we've had 2 years of it. We've also had massive success with it. But I will say that a lot of it came from having a very different mindset and approach. If you really fully understand the space and you really fully believe in your product, and you can come at somebody with a ton of confidence that, first of all, there is this problem. It's not even a potential problem. I know that there is this problem. And we have 15,000 clients worldwide. So a lot of our data comes from real world companies everywhere, every industry, every country that you can think of. And we can pull together this data that really nobody has, and we can see that it's plaguing everyone all the time. So I can go and approach a CMO and tell him with a very high degree of certainty, you have this problem. And it kind of becomes like a game of chicken, and I'm not going to fold because I know I'm right. So not everybody could do it, I have to say. It is a kind of a crazy move to come at someone with that much confidence, but you do it once, you do it twice, and then you start to hear the stories when they do run the scan with us, when they do see their own numbers, when you have them as a client for a year and you hear that CHEQ has become a must-have for their team, and it's the one line item that they can't think of operating without after having seen it. So, I mean, that just builds the confidence, and it also helps build what we're doing. So,
Yeah, definitely. It comes down to sort of a little bit more like the case study sort of selling approach of the, well, obviously this is what was our last client was, and then using it obviously in the future reference. But no, really cool space for you guys to be in, and I'm quite jealous, to be honest. It sounds like a pretty cool sale, and I'm oozing with confidence, so I probably would get along with it. But so regarding, obviously I'm in recruitment, so this topic is obviously close to my heart. But I mean, as a leader yourself, I mean, how do you approach the recruitment, talent acquisition to ensure you've got the right team in place?
So I've always believed in a method. I think it's a sentence a quote that I heard once from Peter Schutz, who used to be the CEO of Porsche. In his sentence, this is how he saved the company in the late 80s, early 90s: hire character, train skill. I didn't necessarily look for people who are coming in with this amount of experience at doing this, X, Y, or Z. I was looking for people who have that confidence and that energy and that fire, and I'll just teach them everything else. So I needed somebody who's, in a way, a little bit crazy, and just has the right type of mentality. And then the skills and whatever, teaching somebody how to prospect or how to specifically say something on the phone, or those things I could teach pretty easily. This is my 5th team that I've built from the ground up. So I've been doing this for a while, and I've worked in, ad tech, martech, fintech. So I've worked in different industries and always took people and taught them sales from day one. So teaching like sales psychology and also teaching whatever it was that we were selling. This being such a hot topic was a little bit easier to get people excited about, but you still need to have somebody who is going to be willing to run through walls, even if they're not able to yet, but at least willing to. And then I kind of had to take a degree of kind of like betting on myself that I'll be able to get them to a point where they could do it successfully. So find the right type of character, find somebody who's a little bit crazy. I've been here for 2 years. If you remember the last 2 years, there were times in the market that not a single person wanted to work from the office. And that's still true today, but I think people have started to come around a little bit. And I insisted on building a team that comes to the office 3 days a week in New York City, which is not easy. It wasn't easy to find. There were times that I was tempted to start looking at remote. There's definitely very good candidates in other places in the country, but it was very important that we share like this energy and like this drive. And I think this team right now is probably one of the most diverse, fun, and energetic, competitive, and at the same time also just like inclusive and tight knit at the same time. So like we have the right type of competition. The team is like very, very together. They're all very good friends. And it took a long time to just like piece together the right type of characters.
Definitely. And I think if you are hiring on character as well, the actually hiring the in-office model is a great approach, because you're obviously there with them. They're learning from each other. They're learning from you. I'm a big believer in like peer-to-peer learning is massive. I think when I started my career in sales, I said this before on the podcast, that I walked in, I went, right, who's the best person in here? Okay, cool. I'm going to do everything he does, but do it better. And I know that is basically a fail safe. If you don't know what you're doing, just find whoever knows what the hell they're doing. And it can sort of be replicated from home, and you can listen to each other's calls or whatever, but it doesn't.
It's not. I mean, yeah, you could. There's a lot of things you can do from home, right? There's a lot of things. Could you physically do this from? Yeah, you could. But I mean, it's one of the hardest roles there is out there. You face constant rejection, and it's really built around celebrating really small wins. Like at the end of the day, what do we really celebrate? We set a meeting. Does it mean anything? Technically for now, it doesn't mean anything. It's still they still haven't showed up to the meeting. They still didn't, sign a contract. We're far away from ever seeing money from the meetings that we set. It's a very small win. But after like getting so many no's and getting so many doors slammed in your face and so many like slaps across the face, you're celebrating a small win. So first of all, you want to be around somebody who can celebrate you when you do something well. Just like even if it's something small, you just had a great call, somebody was right next to you, they're clapping for you. 5 minutes later, you hear somebody else using one of your sentences. That's great. So you want to be there, one, for people to like celebrate your small wins, but also to pull you up if you're constantly getting like no's and no's and no's and you're by yourself, it'll be probably harder to recover from it than when you see that everyone's kind of in it together and people are there to pull you up when you need to get pulled up. You're there to pull others up also, and you're there to have people also celebrate your wins when you are up. So that, I think, is something that cannot be faked. I don't think it's something that can be done from home. I mean, it can, but just like not as effectively. And we see, we're in the office 3 days a week. We see that the days that we're in the office, everything is just better. It's not that we don't have good days when we're home, but our days in the office are definitely stronger, more fun, just like we see better results.
Yeah, I definitely think that being in an office environment, I think sometimes like the SDR role is quite similar to an individual contributor in the recruitment world. Like we're obviously going out chasing leads, and our main objective is to book a meeting with a client. And being in that environment of having someone that can be reactive to hearing you say something or do something wrong. I could go a whole day working from home using closed questions, or on a very simple basis using closed questions, or just saying the wrong thing, even just something about my pitch my tone's wrong, my energy's wrong. You could go a whole day, you've just wasted like a whole work day, whereas someone could have just be there, your manager, or just like one of your peers just goes, have you thought about tweaking this? I did it literally yesterday. We were closing a candidate, one of our employees was closing a candidate, and I was listening to his call, and I was like, fuck me, this sounds boring. Like, this really, there's no energy to it. There's no excitement. I said, he's new to the sales industry. And I went, you're talking to a salesperson. You're closing a salesperson. They can read body language like no tomorrow. If they're good, they can read your language. So energy, speak, like, and he was just like, oh yeah, that makes so much more sense. And I was like, very simple thing, but he didn't think about it.
And it would have taken 10 times longer for him to catch it on his own, or even for somebody who's listening to calls. Like if you have a big team, you're not going to hear every call. Even in the room, I don't hear every call, but to go and to listen to calls one by one. And if you're at home and you're trying to learn and somebody might be trying to help you and they'll send you some of their calls, obviously they'll send you only the good ones. You need to have somebody who can just be like, yo, that sentence you just said there, that was fire. That was amazing. Or it's like, hey, that one thing, yeah, get rid of that. That's terrible. Like, don't ever say that again. And it's a small thing. It would take so much longer if you had to, take time of your day, just like dedicate it to listening to calls and whatever. It's like when it's organic, when it's happening around you, it's just, everything just flows better. So finding those characters was not easy, but I'm really I can really say this is not the first I've been on, and it's definitely not the first team that I built. Probably one of the strongest teams that I've ever had. So super proud of these guys. And at this point, now they're helping each other, and you can tell that they know how to find those sentences. Like you said, somebody who's new, they might not realize that it's not even about what you say, it's how you say it. You could say the wrong thing, but say it the right way, get a win. You could say the absolute right thing, perfect, like textbook definition, but you said in such a flat tone that nobody wants to listen to it. So it'll never work.
Definitely. I used to work in the like German and Dutch market. Like 90% of the time, I'm pretty sure they didn't understand a word I was saying. But they would obviously hear it said in a certain way. It was communicated. They could pick up on certain words. Also, when I'm rambling, I also will mix up words all the time. So it was quite good in those markets because no one really understood it. People would be laughing in the corner of the office going, what did he just say? I just closed a candidate, but that was part of the learning experience. But obviously, you've got this amazing team in place, which is obviously ideal. But obviously, retaining staff is super important. How do you go about retaining them, basically?
So, that's, I think, the hardest part of the game. So, as a leader, I think what a lot of people miss is that everybody has something else that kind of works for them. So, you really got to get to know your reps. And I know that I have certain people who, if I tell them that they're doing great, hey, you're number one, you're doing great, it'll just give them so much more energy to do better. And I have certain people, if I tell them that, they'll just take their foot off the gas. That's it. They're done for the day. They won't think. And the same is opposite. The opposite is also true, where some people you tell them, hey, like, you're not, like, how are you in last place? It'll get them fired up. There's no way they're going to be in last place. And some people you tell them that, and there's like, they shut down. They just like can't. So you really got to like find what each person cares about. Some people want money. Some people want recognition. Some people want whatever that might be. So you really got to know each rep, and then have a pretty good read on like what makes them work harder, what makes them kind of like shut down. But it's about just being in tune with them. And I believe it's about just making them, first of all, know that they're being seen, and that there's also like a path. So a big focus on retaining is not just like promising that something's going to happen in the future, but showing them that, you fight for them, showing them that you see them, showing them that you're aware of what they're trying to achieve, because nobody's coming to a BDR role to be a BDR forever, BDR, SDR. So it's making sure that they know that they're not in this alone, and making sure that they know that they're being heard and seen, and that there is a future. And at the same time, you got to also match what you're saying to the person that you're saying it to, because what you say to person number one is not going to work with person number two.
Definitely. I think actually sometimes that can be an issue when you're like working for like a corporate company or something. They have these blueprints of how they train their leaders and how they bring them up, and they make out as if that everybody is they're the same robot that we're trying to produce from the factory, but actually everyone is really different. Like I personally know that I love praise. Like, it's just one of those things. I love being told I'm doing a good job. It's quite funny. I work with our founder of the company, and getting praise from him is like drawing blood from a stone. But when he does give praise, you're like, okay, cool. Like,
Yeah.
you've done well. But it definitely is. And it is about understanding it. And it does take time to understand each individual's and whether this is actually how they react to scenarios, but also about their learning style as well. Especially within, I mean, in our small company of like 6 of us, there were so many different learning styles. I'm quite a visual learner. I prefer things. If you gave me a book and said, read this and remember it, it's just not happening. Whereas if I could have a little audio and some pictures, no issue at all. So it's about, again, understanding those things, especially as a leader.
I also thrive on praise or even just recognition. Praise, I think, is like, to me, is even like an extreme. I don't even expect praise, but just like recognize, show me that you saw what I did. I remember times in my career when I had my strongest quarter ever, broke every sales record imaginable. And the one person that I was hoping to get praise from just made me feel like they didn't even see what I did. And it was like my best quarter ever. And I felt the worst I've ever felt. And it's just like that happened to me in my career. And I've definitely seen that. Yeah, I made a lot of money that quarter. I should have been super happy, but that's when I really learned that money doesn't buy happiness, or at least for me. You think it does. It really doesn't. Some of my years where I made the most money were the years I was most miserable because I just felt like I was not seen. Nobody saw what I was doing. Even if they did, they only had complaints. They never were happy. I was on paper, numbers, nobody could ever say anything. Broke every record imaginable, but still felt terrible. So you got to be seen. So I think from learning that, kind of like on myself, I put like extra emphasis for my reps to make sure that they feel seen, to make sure that they do get, if they need praise, to get, the praise that they need to get, and to stay ahead of it. Sometimes when somebody's already down, it's hard to come and fix it. You got to be ahead of these things. You can't just like wake up one day and decide to invest in someone. You got to do it constantly because people get burnt out, especially in a role like this. People get burnt out very easily if they feel like they're on like this constant, like they're spinning their wheels all the time.
Yeah, for sure. To be fair, I have a little story behind that. And I mean, it was in my last recruitment role that I actually left after having my 2 largest ever paychecks in my whole of my career. And this was literally down to that I was burning myself out. I was having panic attacks, anxiety, which I thought was normal. But I then actually realized that actually money didn't buy happiness because my paycheck was going up every month. And I was like, and then it got to a point I was just like, well, I'm just being taxed more at this point. And that I was just looked at them and went, the money is great and it's great that I can buy these nice things, but I'm not even buying the nice things because I don't have time to go and do any of it. I wasn't going on holiday. It wasn't like I was treating my partner or whatever it be. It was just work. And then I was like, okay, cool. I already get out of this environment. And everyone literally said to me, you're making the worst mistake you'll ever make in your life. Like, blah, 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 whatever. I now work with 4 of my mates from university in a small startup. I work more hours than I've ever worked in my life, but not tired, happy, enjoy it.
That's super important.
Yeah, and we have a blast. We have so much fun. Like, my girlfriend hates it because she goes, so I was like, oh, you're going out with the boys on Friday. And she's like, is this a work social or is this your mates? I was like, well, my mates are my work, so I'm going to say work probably, which is just a bit of a weird. I just have to decide.
You're not lying, technically.
No, technically not. And if it's a work one, she's not allowed to come. But if it's mates ones, then maybe. So it's get the segregation. But
no, I mean, people don't realize that small recognition, small acts of recognition go a very long way. And, that's when you realize it, to maybe pay attention to others that you oversee. I learned that the hard way. And I'm telling you, some of my lowest points, like in terms of how I felt, were when I was making the most amount of money.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, so we've got the team, we've retained the team, we've got those in place. How do you go about sort of fostering like a culture of learning, career development within your team?
So what I do is, first of all, our team, part of what we do when we're in office, just every day, we have a morning meeting every single day. Part of that recognition, by the way, is part of that morning meeting and part of the culture. So first of all, to set kind of like the schedule, every day, 9 a.m., we have a morning meeting. That's just like for all of us to be in tune with each other. Like, what are we even doing today? In that meeting, there's also a time to praise. Somebody did a really good job yesterday. People want to have their voice or their name heard in those meetings. They want to be shouted out. At the same time, if somebody did something that was just like absolutely bonkers, like you should never ever do that again, everyone's going to hear it too. I mean, if it's going to benefit the team, everybody needs to know not to do this. So it's like you do and you don't want to hear your name in those morning meetings. And it becomes like this game of like, do I want to be used as a good example or a bad example? Now that's like kind of like, it's like basic. Aside from that, we have different like learning sessions where different news stories. Like I gave you the little Taylor Swift thing. That was like, everybody's heard that. That was also a while ago. There's a lot of stories that come out basically every single day, a lot of articles of things that are happening in the news. So we're now dividing that up by the team. People volunteer to do like a research project on like what happened, how does it matter to us, how would it matter to our clients, and how do we now weave this into our talk track for the next week. So people present things and people like they want to be the leaders of this, the master of like this one story, this one use case. How do we write a script around it or whatever? So giving people small tasks and like giving them responsibility for the rest of the team has always been something that I've seen that's helpful, because people, first of all, want to feel like they're contributing, and they, again, want to feel like they're kind of like important. So just like one, always being together, having competitions, having a lot of fun, mentioning people for good or bad reasons where they do or don't want to be mentioned. And then also just like letting people lead each other and like have them be the expert at something and have them teach. And then we run a lot of competitions. That's like one of the things I try to gamify a lot of what we do, so that, like I said, it's hard work. It's also kind of like, you got to remember this role, it's a losing game the whole time. You're dialing 100 people. Most of them don't answer. Like 95% won't answer. From the 5% that do pick up, most of them are not interested. Probably very rude also. So you got to gamify as many things as possible and kind of like make this whole thing that's pretty terrible, honestly, make it fun. So a lot of competitions. And then I try to also like give them prizes, whatever it might be, whether we're doing like a daily competition or like a monthly thing where it's a bigger prize, just like to gamify a lot of things. So adding to kind of like that, making something that, like I said, statistically was really our numbers, our success is really minority of what we do. So celebrating those small wins, making it fun, making it competitive, making it also lucrative, adding a prize to it.
Yeah, it's super important, especially for when it comes down to cold calling and dialing all day long. It is a laborious task, and it does need incentivizing as well, or in some cases. But no, definitely some really cool things, stuff that we've tried to implement as well. What we've done, we were reading a lot of articles in behind sort of when you're doing a task like cold calling, if you do get a win, it's actually about like rewarding yourself. So if you, let's say you had a bowl of sweets, every time you had a good call and you got a meeting booked, it's like you have a sweet. So then you have that sort of like, if you do something good, you get a sweet. The same thing of when an animal has those things of like, okay, if I put my nose under here, I get a treat. Or if I sit, I get a treat. The same thing you can do with humans if you reward them for something good, and then it actually has that thing of, okay, I'll keep dialing the phone, or if I pick this up, then I will get these results. And
yeah, one thing I have noticed though is that when I do try to gamify things, I don't gamify dials, for example, because you could be dialing bullshit numbers all day long, and it's like, all right, cool, that doesn't help any of us. So I want to gamify the byproduct of what we're trying to do. So I would measure conversations. So they need to be conversations over 2 minutes. It's like, that's usually where, the magic is. If you can get somebody on the phone for more than 2 minutes, you're not calling like wrong numbers. You're not dialing pizzerias, and you're not like dialing 911 20 times a day and they answer every time. It needs to be a conversation. It needs to be 2 minutes plus for it to count. So I don't tell them go dial like 1,000 dials. That doesn't help us. You can dial your parents 1,000 times a day. It needs to be 2-minute conversations or more. And that's kind of like for you to not focus on, I'm not going to say whoever sets the most meetings, because that also introduces like a degree of stress. And then people stress out about setting the meeting. They get somebody on the phone and they're like, hey, you want a meeting? And they're like, no. So you just like ruined your chance, because it sounds like people smell like we said, we talk to salespeople, or we talk to just anyone. They can smell on you from a mile away that you're trying to get them into a meeting anyway. So if you're going to be like too desperate, or like that's the one thing you care about, you always care about it, but like now we have a competition, you're going to sound like it 10 times more. You're probably not going to, actually help your chances there. So focus on conversations. One, it'll mean that your dials have to be up, but also the quality of your calls will go up. And as a byproduct from that, you'll probably also get more meetings. But I specifically don't make the meetings or the dials the KPI. I focus on conversations, which is like the quality of those two things together.
No, definitely. And we used to do a very similar thing at my previous company, in the sense of when we're on a discovery call or whatever it be is actually, okay, a list of different bits of information you need to get from the call. And obviously you're getting points per what you're actually getting from it. Because actually then, as you said, it's the byproduct of what you're getting. And
Yeah.
obviously your aim is then to obviously get through your questions, get the intel you need to be able to then sell back to them your solution and how you can fix it. But yeah, completely agree with that approach. Obviously, so we've spoken about the retaining, the getting, the developing them. Obviously, the next step is basically identifying and nurturing the emerging leaders. How do you go about that? What do you sort of look for?
I kind of let them decide. Most people ask me on the interview, what's the path? And one, being at where we are as this company, like I said, I've been here for 2 years. 2 years ago, I didn't believe that we would be, not that I didn't believe, obviously, I wouldn't come here if I didn't believe that we can grow and be doing amazing things. But in terms of how it's evolved and the types of teams that we have now and things that didn't exist 2 years ago, I didn't know that we're going to have a team. And when I first joined, we didn't have a team in Latin America. I didn't know that I'm going to have a rep who works on the Brazilian market. So as time went on, since I started hiring people, I noticed that when it comes time to promote, by the time they're getting promoted, there's all these different roles that didn't even exist when they first were hired. So even things that I could have promised them in day one, not that I would ever, it's like, let's see where we get. It's so different when it's actually relevant. So every person that's been promoted, 5 people in this time, every person that's been promoted has gone into something that literally did not exist when they first joined, and it was something that they chose. So some went to the AE roles, like some people might think is like the natural progression of a BDR, but they went into an AE role in a department that didn't exist at first. When some went into, team lead or more the management style or being sort of coaches, that did not exist. I wasn't ever supposed to have team leads on my team. So they kind of feel out what they want to do. And once we see that they're doing the things that they need to do to go there, and we have the ability to make it happen, we make it happen. It's been very dynamic in terms of where people go. So there's not one path, there's infinite paths, and also ever evolving as a company. So that allows us to really take people to where they want to go.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, I think that's a really nice approach as well. And obviously, everyone has a different journey and everyone has different goals. And as you said, some people think that that is a natural progression for them to go into an AE role. And sometimes I think actually people, like, it's the same thing of if you're like an AE, naturally people think that you should be a VP of sales.
Yep.
But you don't necessarily need to move on from that. And there are obviously other routes that people can look into. And I think that also comes down to having a good leader that is honest and also communicates with you on what they also think you would be good at. Because we do it as recruiters, we'll say to an AE, okay, for example, why do you want to be a VP of sales? And if they say the things, I want more money or whatever it be, you're like, well, stay as an AE. You probably will earn more because if you have a good year, you definitely will out earn the
Yeah.
VP. So it's one of those scenarios. What I'd love to delve into a little bit more about you and your journey as a leader. Are there any sort of key experiences that have shaped your leadership style?
I'm sure there's a lot of things that have shaped my leadership style. I guess, I mean, one of them, like I told you, kind of learning the long way or the hard way that you could be doing great, but you're not getting recognition. It's going to actually pull you down. I've learned that on my own skin. And as a leader, I try to stay ahead of that and to make sure that people feel seen and heard. And, I have a lot more touch points with my reps than some of my managers ever had. But it's kind of funny because, like, I have made the jump between IC, seller, management. And like every so often, it's like you're managing people, you're making money based off of other people's performance. Sometimes you say to yourself, what do I need this? Let me go sell. I'll make money for myself. I don't need this headache. And then you jump to the other side and you can't help. I don't know. I'm talking about myself, obviously. I can't help myself. I see somebody who needs help, but I always somehow help them. And I always somehow, even by accident, end up becoming some sort of a leader. Either I take some people under my wing or management sees what I do and they tell me, hey, you want to maybe do this? And I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. And I somehow get sucked into it. Everything that I've touched in my life, I have somehow led. So even a car club that I went to once, just when they first opened, they had their first like Sunday meetup. Next thing I know, I'm part of the management team. And fast forward to today, this club has been around for 12 years. There's 240 members. It's insane. It's like, it's a very tight knit, like small little community, but it's something that I didn't even plan to lead and somehow did. So the journey has been funny because there was a company, this was like 2 companies ago, and one of the 5 teams that I built, that was a company that I joined after already being a manager. The company that I was at decided to kind of like the two managing directors decided to part ways and go separate ways. So I was looking for a new role, came in with managing experience. And on the interview, they told me, listen, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what you've done before. You could have been the CEO of the previous company. You're starting from the bottom, just like everyone else. And I was like, all right, I believe in myself. I could do it. No worries. And I joined this like team, and the first 3 days, there's no training. I'm just sitting there, like just listening to their calls. Just literally just here's the room, here's the phone, just listen. And I listened to them for 3 days, and I'm shocked by these people who have all been there for around a year and a half or 2 years. And in my first few days on the phones, I got standing ovations when I was making calls next to these people. They would stay after work. I would just like be on the phones. Like, I don't care that it's 6 o'clock. I'm still working. And they would stay and clap for me when I'm done making calls. And in my first full month, I was at 9x their numbers. I made 9 times the amount of sales that they made. And the next month, I got promoted to be my boss's boss. I got a double promotion. I became my boss's boss. And that was a difficult one because I knew that they were lacking a lot of structure. There was like no structure. It was honestly, I think people were there to just like for friendships. Like they were really friendly with each other, but they were not pushing each other in any sort of positive direction. Nobody's trying to make anything happen. People would show up whenever they show up. They would leave whenever they leave. They would hang up on people for no reason, just like not even try to sell. So my first day there, I knew that I have to make a very swift change. And I told them, when I got promoted, it was announced at one evening and it was effective the next day. And I told everyone, all right, 9 a.m. tomorrow, we have a morning meeting. And nobody's ever had a morning meeting in this company. And people show up. Somebody came in at 9:01. I told them, get out. You're not coming in a minute late. And I ended up firing 80% of the team and building it from scratch. And it became the strongest team that has ever existed there. But it was kind of like I had to be a little bit of the bad guy and sort of come in after everybody else and show them that there's a different way to do things and really also have the guts and the balls to do it. And I was not there to make friends. I was there to make money. And if you wanted to stay with me, great. But if you didn't, that's also great. So, I mean, that was like part of the journey. It's not like every place that I've gone, I've tried to
just fire everybody. And
it's like not the idea, but you got to do what you got to do. And
no, for sure. I mean,
not.
Complacency is an absolute killer for anybody. And it is also really contagious. As soon as somebody else around you is being complacent, or we had this conversation within the company that my numbers weren't as good as where I'd like them to be. I always set myself really high standards. But when somebody else is maybe slightly lower than you, but actually considerably lower, and your numbers aren't as high as where they are, you're constantly thinking, okay, cool, well, I'm not that far behind that person. But if that person's not happy, but actually the standards are all the way up here.
Yep.
So it really is a hard one that you're always comparing yourself to the person that's above you, or you shouldn't be comparing yourself to anybody, in my opinion. And that's what I always, when I first started in sales, my biggest issue was we had a big board on the front of the office with the top, what your billings were and everything like that. And I was constantly going, okay, cool. The person who started at the same time as me, he's there, the person I need to beat. But that was all I was focused on, was like the deals and just focusing on, I need to beat him. Whereas if I'd blocked that out and just focused on me, I would have been a 10-time better recruiter when I first started, because I would have been focused on me in the present, the little things that could impact my deals, rather than, look, he's beating me. But
that's a big thing that also, like when I'm hiring, this one question keeps coming up lately. He's like, how's everybody in the team doing? What's the quota attainment like? Whatever. It's like, it doesn't matter. I came to a team that literally nobody was even close to their targets, and I blew past their targets. And it doesn't matter. Everybody else could be terrible. I'm not going to measure myself against everybody else. Yeah, if nobody's reaching targets, maybe it means the targets are too high. Maybe it means that there's not a product market fit. Maybe it means all these sorts of things. But honestly, like if you really know what you're doing, and you should really focus just on yourself. And people sometimes, I think the fear is that they'll compare themselves to the one person that's below them and be like, oh, well, I'm better than that guy. Well, it doesn't matter. You can be 12 times better than the guy who's above you. It doesn't matter. Like, you shouldn't be like feeling comfortable because somebody's doing worse. You want to be doing better than yourself, and you want to be doing better than, I don't know, if you have your targets are to make an X amount of money or to have a certain lifestyle. That's the only thing that matters. So that's a pretty big one. I hear that a lot. I think I remember when it started, and I was scrolling Facebook or whatever one day, and you get all those like bullshit articles that are like sponsored, like all the clickbait ones. And I was like, here's a question that Elon Musk asks every person he interviews or something like that. And I was like, I wonder what it is. No, let's read it. I don't know. I don't care. And that was the question. I was like, he likes when people ask him like how the team is doing or something like that. That's how it started. So I read that stupid article once. And then I noticed that with time, it became basically from something that I started to hear a little bit more to something that I hear on every interview. And it actually pisses me off that people ask me because it just means that they have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? We get asked it all the time. Like,
It means
and
nothing.
as much as I take the specification and I do sometimes ask like, how's the team getting on or whatever it is, generally only if the manager tells me how the team's doing. I'm not really going to go chasing for the answer. But then the candidates will go, oh yeah, well, I don't know if I want to meet with them unless I know how the team's doing. I'm like, just talk to the person. Like, if you're a good salesperson, go and sell the product. Does the product look good? Yeah, the product looks good.
Number
Okay,
one.
cool.
Go be
And
number one at that company. If everyone's terrible, what do you care?
I put it down to the to be honest, and it's what is a massive red flag, I think, if someone's asking this question. They're looking for the easy route, especially in this market, especially in 2023. People are going, okay, cool. How can I actually hit my quota the easiest? Okay,
Yep.
cool. I'm going to go and find a company where everyone's hitting it because either they're probably just looking that the targets are really low, if I'm honest with you. That's one of the newest red flags for me when I'm priming up candidates. And I'm like, yeah, you're like, when I've had a client go, I want a ruthless seller, someone who's going to come in and smash my quotas, smash everything out of the park and set the standards. And they ask that question, I'm like, no, you're not that person. You just can't be. I don't care what you've done in the past. Something in your brain is going, I want an easy life. And it's just not going to happen, especially if you're selling a new product or a different way of selling.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's one of the things I look for. And when I was, like I said, within the 2 years that I'm here, there was a time that finding somebody in New York who's like willing to come to the office. And I remember recruiters would hit me up and say, oh, I saw that you have a post on LinkedIn. You're hiring, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, I'm looking for people in office. He's like, oh, I heard this from a few recruiters. Oh, I can find you people who are willing to come. I was like, well, if you can find people who are willing to come, send them anywhere else. I need people who want to come. I don't need willing. And they say, well, I could find you people who are willing to come, but it'll cost more. I was like, no, you're definitely talking to the wrong person. Like, go send those people to any other company. I need people who want to be in the office, who cannot work from home. I need like very specific people. And it was a very hard market to back then to find people who, again, like willing to come in New York, BDR role, whatever. And it was a time where people were like job hopping like crazy, like crazy. I could talk to somebody who's been at like 3 companies in a row for like a month or two. Why? Because every time they get a call from a recruiter, because that was a time that it was like a candidates market, they knew that they could like improve their whatever OT by like $5,000 a year, they would make the jump immediately. In my head, I was like, first of all, that's not a good look. If you're willing to come to me after a month at that place, when are you going to leave me in a month also? No thanks. 1, 2, they were very opportunistic. It was very obvious that they're looking for the easiest way. So what I started doing is that instead of actually interviewing someone and like kind of uncovering this with time, I would just tell them, hey, you know what? I want this to be very open. I want this to be, you know, you have the stage just as much as I do. You ask me the first question. And then every time I did that, the first question would always be, so how many days do I work from home? Homie, it's a hybrid role. Why didn't you ask me how many days you work from the office? I was like, so it was like, whatever. Like the first question, I could just tell what the one thing they care about is. And I was like, all right. In my head, I was like, all right, we're done with this one. I'm asking a few more questions just to confirm my suspicions and to see that, again, they're just like you said, looking for like the easiest way, least amount of work. And it's okay. Like you need to have a work-life balance. I don't expect that anyone's going to work 28 hours a day, 9 days a week, but you also need to know this is a sales role. You can't be comfortable. You got to also push yourself. You got to actually want to go and you want to do above and beyond. It doesn't mean you have to kill yourself or do something insane, but you also got to do something.
The thing is, well, if you're starting out in your career, I was having this conversation with an early stage recruiter the other day that you do need to put in more hours. Then you can't and it's actually if you're going into an environment where everybody's already settled, they've been there maybe a year, 2 years, that's actually one of the hardest places for a graduate or someone just quite early in their career, because they see someone like going out for some beers or going out in the afternoon to play some golf or whatever it be, that they actually need to be in that environment where you're being pushed to actually, okay, you need to do more. Especially in an early stage salesperson, you're competing against other people that are already experienced from other companies. There's no way that you have more knowledge than them. So the only way that you're going to win a deal against other people is by outworking them.
Yep.
in the early days. It is a mind thing, it is a culture thing. This is what I was saying, this individual, that you need to look at the culture you're in, especially early on in your career. As much as the culture I was in previously, I didn't like towards the end, to learn and to get myself to where I needed to be as a recruiter, it was great. It
Yep.
was awesome, and the self-development was awesome. But it was just like, eventually you go, okay, cool. But that's what they're known for. They are literally a graduate. They're a churning machine that they know they won't keep. They'll keep some people for like 10 years, but everybody will be like a year and a half. They'll be like, right, let's go and find something else.
But you also don't know who you're looking at. It's like if you're brand new at the company and you see that you're like senior AE who's been here for 5 years is going to play golf in the middle of the day. It's like, that's not you. Don't worry about it. Like you got some work to do. Like you're not there yet. And not yet. So
yeah, exactly.
People, I think, get very scatterbrained when it comes to looking for examples of what they can and can't do. And you got to remember, like, this role is, again, it's to build your skills. You'll get to a point where you can manage your time, and a BDR role is like almost like managing a small company. Like you're managing the pipeline and the follow-ups and the outbound and everything, but you're not at the point that you got this and you can take the day and do whatever. You really got to develop a system and a method. You got to work hard. And that's part of also, you can't do it from home. You got to learn from people. You got to like really put yourself into it, and you got to fail. You got to fail. You got to fail a lot. You got to fail fast and often, and you got to do it next to people, and like shying away from it and like being in your house and making calls like when nobody could hear you. Like you're never going to get good like that. You could do it.
Cold calling from home is awful.
Yeah, you're never going to get good like that because that's like, again, comfort is the enemy of success. If you're comfortable, it means you're like, if you're shy with your calls and you're able to do it where nobody hears you, just don't do it. It's terrible. Like you're not doing anything good.
Yeah.
You need to be in a place where people can like make fun of you and you'll be like, oh, fuck, I got to fix it.
I think the amusing one is that you'd have someone, they're in the office and it's getting down as low as possible. And I'm like, do you know what? There is actually science. And this is what I always say to any early stage recruiter, that if you stand up on the phone, you will have a 10-time better call. It's like when you got your headset on, if you're walking around, big chest, proud, your communication is just so much clearer and better.
How many performers do you see sitting down? How many bands do you go to and they're sitting down? It's like small, like little unplugged, little acoustic, intimate little bar pub, maybe. Are you going to go see Metallica and they're going to be sitting down? I don't think so. So I used to, back in the day, like the different times, I don't know if this would work today. If anybody would get a win on the phone, but they were sitting down, it wouldn't count. It would go on the board, and the next person who gets it grabs theirs, basically. People had to stand up. And I mean, it wasn't because I want people to be tired by the end. It was because it makes a big difference. In sales, it sometimes doesn't matter what you say. It's how you say it. You could say the wrong thing the right way. You could say the right thing the wrong way. It's not going to lead to the same result.
No, for sure. Prime example is that when you're walking and you're on the phone, wherever you're going, there's some of my best business calls. If I'm just walking and not thinking, it's just like, I'm just saying what needs to be said. But yeah, it's super cool. What I'd love to delve into, and we did just touch on it a little bit about work-life balance. So, I mean, is there any advice, tips you have for anybody along your journey that you've picked up for having a bit of work-life balance and being a top leader?
I mean, that's a tough one, even for me, I got to say, for somebody who like recently also became a dad and I got a gazillion things going on. I think that's kind of like forced me to have balance, because guess what? Baby's crying. It's like, you're going to go back. It's like, no work now. It's only life. And life comes with very little sleep and also a lot of dirty diapers. But work-life balance is really about the only way that I see that it could be possible, because, these days work is with you everywhere you go. It's like you got your phone on, you got Slack on, you got messages, you got LinkedIn, you got emails, you got everything. It's hard for me to even take a day off. It was my birthday this week and I was off on Monday and I was working basically the whole day. So it's hard. But the one thing that you got to do is kind of like with the culture that you build with your team or with the people that are kind of closer to you, they need to know what your boundaries are. You need to be able to communicate with them. Like in this, this type of block on my calendar means, I got to have focus time. This kind of block means whatever, but you really just got to know what are your must-do tasks for the day and when do you sign off. It's never going to be perfect. There's always more work to do. You got to be honest with yourself, like what's reasonable to do in one day, what's just like, a fire that you have to attend and it's like important and urgent at the same time, and what is just It could be tomorrow. Nobody's going to die. It's okay. You just like to have like internal boundaries that you have to respect. Because if you don't respect your own boundaries, really nobody will. You know what I mean? It has to come from how you approach certain things. Otherwise, you'll constantly get sucked into things and you'll have just like no balance. It'll be just work all the time. I've seen that people in my family have seen that growing up. It's just like constant work. I try to just set for myself max amount of hours that I'm willing to do on the weekend. I do work on the weekends, but it's not like I'm sitting in front of the computer all the time. It'll be an hour in the morning when nobody's awake, an hour at night when nobody's awake again. And I try the rest of the time to be present and to be focused on life.
And I think the key word there is obviously being present, and it's also being honest with yourself. What we've had quite a few people that have got families and maybe not newborns, but actually just being honest with their partner, with their children, of like, okay, I work a lot. I might also travel or whatever it be. If I'm not here, then I'm working. I'm doing it to better our lives. But when I'm here and I'm with you, I'm present, and you've got my full undivided attention. And it's just about actually having that honesty, and whether it is with a family, whether it's honest with my girlfriend of I do US hours. It's not like I have any evenings midweek to go, cool, do you want to go and grab some dinner somewhere or something? It has to wait till the weekend.
Yeah.
Obviously, I try to take some time off if I can, if it's needed. And I know it's just a patch in a relationship that just needs a bit more attention, but it is important just to be present in the moment. And especially like the evenings is always a fun one. I mean, I have so many friends go around to the house, there'll be TV on, and it's just like head in the phone and like,
you don't want to be that guy. Like, and if you have kids, you don't want your kids to see you as that parent who either on the computer it's like, and it's not a cool look. So
there's so many screens. And this is why I found mental the other day that, and my girlfriend was like, yeah, but that's just like the norm now for kids and everything. It was like they were in the back of a car. They had a TV on the back of their seat in the car. So the kid's watching that. It's also got an iPad and it's watching something on that. And I'm like, what? Like,
good.
Like the kid, what's the kid looking at? I used to play I Spy, looking out the window and having a great time. Like, it's a
different world. But it shouldn't be that way. Like, I don't know. My baby's still pretty small, but some of these screens, they're easy as get the kid distracted. But again, like, at what cost? You don't know how much it's going to cost you. Like all these kids that you see with 3 screens, and
yeah, exactly.
It doesn't make sense. I don't want to be the parent who's always that. So when I do have important work, then I step away. That's one of my things though. Cool. It's like I have an office. I'm either in the office or in the living room. And when I'm in the living room, I'm not working. So that's like, it's like a physical thing. I think also part of like working from home, for me, it's very difficult to be in the same space all the time. It's like, okay, so this is my couch. I open my computer. Now that's my office. I close my computer. Now it's my couch. Magic. No, it's like, 1, it messes with your head. And 2, that's part of like having those boundaries. Like during pandemic, sitting on the same couch for literally a year and a half. And it was everything in my life, living in a 1-bedroom back then, just being stuck in that 1 bedroom for a year and a half. It was difficult because there was no work-life balance, because at any given moment, I could open my computer and be back in my office, and then I'd close it, and then I'm in my living room. So like making that physical, like kind of like the physical differentiation between where I am right now and what that means I'm doing. And then maybe having a baby helped with this, because it like pulls you back into reality sometimes very quickly. And then all you got to do is just like remember that that's the path you want to be on right now. Like now I'm doing family stuff. Maybe later I have to go back to work, but then I'm going to a different room.
Just splitting up, segregating it. That is awesome. And I really appreciate your time, Gil. So much information there, so much useful information as well. So really appreciate you giving us the time, and I'm sure the listeners will really appreciate it as well.
Sure thing. I enjoyed it a lot. Thanks for having me. This was great. Again, I've enjoyed our conversations in the past. This one I think was also a lot of fun. So thanks for having me. Looking forward to potentially next time.
Yeah, thanks so much.